we'll now have to make sure that we can go back to our menu scene from the game. And therefore, we will go back to our gamescene.swift file, where we'll take another look at what currently happens when our game is over. In the didBeginContact method, we're calling the gameOver method, which as of now just prints game over to our console. But we need to change this. So let's delete this print statement. We now want to go back to our menu, and therefore we're pretty much doing the same thing like we did in our menu to get to the game scene, by defining a constant called menu scene and initializing it as a menu scene instance with the size set to view.bounds.size. And then we will call view.presentScene and present our menu scene. This would already bring us back to the menu from where we could start another game, which is pretty neat. But before we actually do that, we want to save our high score, if we manage to get one. And in any case, we want to save our recent score. We're going to use UserDefaults to do so, which are a very convenient way of saving small pieces of data persistently in our applications. So all I need to do is UserDefaults.standard.setInteger for key, and we can then define a integer value to save and the key which it should be assigned to. This key will then be used to retrieve the saved value, which we'll do in our menu scene in a second. But let's just pass our score for the value here. And for the key, I will say recent score. This always saves our most recent score for this key. For the high score, I will first have to check if our current score is bigger than the current high score. So to do so, I'll write if score is bigger than UserDefaults.standard.integer for key with the key high score, which will allow us to compare our current score to the score currently saved as the high score, which we can get with this expression here. If we don't have a value saved for this key yet, this will return 0, which is exactly what we needed to return. Since obviously, if we never scored any points in our game, our high score will be 0. However, if our current score is bigger, I will also call UserDefaults.standard.set and then pass score for the key high score to also save our score as the new high score for our game. Before we now run the app again, I want to quickly go back into our menu scene.swift file, where I want to add something to our high score, as well as to our recent score labels. For the high score, I will, after the text high score, add a colon and a space, and then append the string UserDefaults.standard.integer for key high score with string interpolation. For the recent score label, I will do the same, but this time use UserDefaults.standard.integer for key recent score. And that's all. We're now displaying the appropriate values which we did save in the gameOver method in our game scene. So let's run the app and take a look. We should now be able to see the value 0 for both scores. As the app starts, we can see that this is actually the case. And if I now play a game and let's say collect 1 point, we should get back to the menu on a game over, which just happened. And we can now see the value 1 for both scores. If I now play again and this time fail directly, we can see that our high score is still 1, but the recent score is 0. These values we're saving with UserDefaults will also persist across app starts, which is pretty neat because we don't want to reset our high score every time the player closes the app. Theoretically, our app is already working pretty well right about now. We have a solid game flow and can go from our menu to playing and back, while correctly saving our scores. However, we do want to talk about 2 minor things that we can do with SK actions, like a small animation in our menu or a sound in our game, which can make this already great, but very small game even a bit more sophisticated.